It's time for Screen Junkies Movie Fights.
This episode is brought to you by Good Omens, a new series premiering on May 31st on Amazon Prime Video. Oh yeah, what I said. What is going on, you guys? What in the world? Welcome to Movie Fights, hashtag Movie Fights Live. We are live today, and this is going to be oh my God, it's all coming down around us. It's an apocalyptic end of the world movie fight, and we got some awesome fighters. Before we jump into that, I got to say hi to hashtag Al Nation. Hoot, hoot, everybody. Percival's in the house. All right, let's meet these. Yeah, I love that picture. Let's meet these formidable foes who are going to be squaring off in this apocalyptic-themed movie fights. First up, you know her from DC Daily, AfterBuzz, all over the internet. Your friend and mine, MARKEIA McCarty.
Yeah, I'm ready here to explore the apocalypse with everybody at this table.
Yes.
Let's nerd out and let's see who wins.
Oh, heck yes. Great. Oh, you know what? Touching hands, I feel bonded.
Yep.
Second, you've seen her on Geek and Sundry, Newegg, and she's now back on Movie Fights.
Yes.
TRISHA HERSHBERGER.
Thank you so much for having me. I'd like to think that if we all squatted up, we could survive the apocalypse together.
I think we could. We'd probably have to, kill and eat Greg, but we would still
I like
survive.
where this is going. Yeah.
And you're into it. Well, I mean, if he's into it, I guess it's fine. But today we're all going to fight. So no co-op gaming today, all fighting.
Nice. If you needed a guy on that squad who, I'm not like an explosive expert or a knife expert, but I could say dumb crap all day long.
If you need a funny guy in the squad.
You need the heart.
You need a funny guy.
And
You
you
need
can
the
talk to the
Chandler of the
animals.
squad.
I'll take it. And finally, you know him from The Real Rejects and the reigning bathroom key-holding champion.
By the way, those bathrooms are amazing.
Oh, yeah. They are slick.
I was like, this is not the bathroom I'm used to.
Yeah,
we should move the set over there.
Yeah,
that was
it's
nice.
it's the kind of bathroom that an 80s drug kingpin could feel very at home.
It's kind of you have an action movie fight in.
Oh, hell yeah. Arnold Schwarzenegger could kill
or
someone
Henry
there.
Cavill.
Greg Alba, welcome back to the party. Good to see you, my friend.
Happy to be here. Happy to be here.
Yes.
I'll keep it brief. I like being here. I love everyone here. I like you all. Let's have fun. Let's chat.
I second all of that. Deciding today's go-around, we have the Dan Cam. Along with myself, we got Dan Murrell and Danielle Radford, the voice of the people. Dan, you're going to be holding down the fact zone,
That's
right?
As always, checking the facts, trying to make sure that we separate fact from fiction wherever we can.
Indeed. And remind us, you made an announcement last week for those the uninitiated who are not privy to that. Please, give us the lowdown.
Yeah, if you didn't see last week's show, you can watch this show and then jump back to last week's show for the full rundown. But Movie Fights is going to be moving off of its weekly schedule in July. Not till July. We'll be here every week until July. We're going to be moving off of the weekly schedule in July. We're going to at least once a month, maybe more. It just kind of depends on when we want to do the show. But as a way to send off the weekly era, starting next week, and this was not my idea, I would like to underscore this, all of June culminating on a last fighter standing event for the belt on July 4th, but all of June will be what Billy Business has deemed the Almost Got Him tournament. I will be fighting every single movie fight in June against some of the most fearsome competitors, my greatest foes, my greatest friends in the game. Each fight will have a different theme. I am super excited to share some of those with you, but I don't want to share all of them in case I don't want to jinx it. Hal.
Question,
Yes.
well, for one of those fights, will you be standing in front of a mirror fighting yourself?
Well, I've learned that we should not stand on the show. So
Oh, yeah,
I will
forget
not be
that. Strike
standing.
that.
But I can announce what next week's fight will be. My first challenge.
Who you got?
It's going to be the battle of the facts. It is going to be myself and everyone else that has sat in this chair recently.
Wow.
Danielle Radford and Lon Harris, the fact checker extraordinaire fight will be next week. That is
That's
not
a spicy
warm-up.
meatball!
Love that.
But
I
if you
like
have-
it.
if you
I
have
dig
any-
it.
Yeah, if you have any questions about the show and what it means, why we're moving, and all that stuff, you can check out the beginning of last week's episode. We go into it in a lot of detail. But we're super excited to start the Almost Got Him tournament next week, and
Wow.
it's gonna be quite a gauntlet.
Do you feel confident?
No. No.
Yeah, we'll see.
Of course not. Yeah, there may be people in this room other than Danielle who would be included in this tournament. You'll have to see. You'll just have to wait and see.
Right on. Dan, and the belt's on the line for every one of
Not
these?
for every one of the fights.
Oh,
The very last weekly fight will be on July 4th. It will be a July 4th extravaganza. It will be last fighter standing, which if you don't know how that event works, we bring in a whole bunch of people. And if you want to get to the end, you have to fight your way through every single one of them. And the winner of that last fighter standing event, the last person standing, will be the new Movie Fights champion.
Wow. Hell yeah! That's always
Royal Rumble.
Yeah, that's some real
intense.
mayhem. Yes. I like it. And sitting next to Dan, waiting patiently, the delightful, wonderful Danielle Radford, the voice of the people. Danielle, do you want to tell us how that whole thing works?
So the way that this works is there is a poll that is going to be going up on YouTube. It happens as soon as the initial arguments come in, because we want to make sure you're voting for the arguments and you're not voting because you like the pick more. And so the way that poll works is, in the case of a tie, we throw it to the audience and you guys will actually help decide the vote. There are some fun polls that are happening on Twitter. Feel free to join those, but they don't count for this specifically. But if you go on to Movie Fights Live, hashtag Movie Fights Live, please give us any alternative answers, any of the dank memes, as we call them.
Yeah.
And if I see something I like, I might shout you out on the show.
That's cool.
That's cool.
Thanks, Danielle. All right, now, before we get started, I definitely want to thank today's sponsor, Amazon Prime Video and Good Omens, for sponsoring today's show. Good Omens is an action-filled comedy about an angel, played by Michael Sheen, and a demon, played by David Tennant, who have formed an unlikely friendship spanning 6,000 years on Earth. The apocalypse is nigh. It's coming, but they have lost the Antichrist, an 11-year-old boy, unaware he's meant to bring upon the end of days. They must now embark on an adventure to find him and save the world before it's too late. Based on the best-selling book by Terry Pratchett and Neil Gaiman, Good Omens premieres on May 31st on Amazon Prime Video. Be sure to check it out.
That looks
Yes.
really cool.
Oh, I mean, talk about
My doctor.
Nick Offerman's in there, John Hamm's up in there, and talk about those two
Michael
guys.
Sheen and David Tennant.
Michael Sheen and
man.
David Tennant paired together.
crazy.
That is a devastating combo.
Yeah,
I'm
the
looking forward
hype
to
for
checking
this
it
show
out.
is real.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, Terry Pratchett, Neil Gaiman, take my money.
Yes,
All the
please.
money.
For Amazon
And if I have
Prime.
Prime, I could just watch it.
There you go.
Right?
Yeah.
I'm helping with this.
Check out Good Omens on Amazon Prime. Now, you guys want to do a little movie fighting? That's why we're here. So, JTE, drop that sick-ass package.
Good Omens, seriously, it's so good.
That does look really good, yeah.
Hey, thanks, Thor. Okay, so let the apocalyptic movie fights begin. Good Omens, it debuts this Friday on Amazon Prime, and in honor of that, we ask, what is the best movie about preventing or surviving the apocalypse? Best movie about preventing or surviving the apocalypse. And we start with player number one, MARKEIA.
Yes. Okay, so starting off, a lot of people like to toss around the word apocalypse, like it's not supposed to be the end of all days ever. Everything wiped out. The way that we know it, there's no turning back. And then also concentrating on what is the best version of preventing this end case scenario. And that movie obviously is Star Trek First Contact. This movie not only prevents the absolute end of not only the human species, but we're talking galactically. Everything turns into Borg. Everything ends. Everything. And they are able to prevent this. And why it is such an excellently great movie is that it's not just a Star Trek movie. This is a movie that even if people don't like sci-fi or sci-fi fiction or anything, you can still have them watch it and they love it. So, yes.
All right, MARKEIA coming out of the gate with Star Trek First Contact, Trisha.
I chose The Matrix. This is fantastic, just a fantastic piece of cinema. So when we're talking about what is the best movie about surviving the apocalypse, I'm going to go with The Matrix. So when we're talking about a great piece of cinema, we can say bullet time special effects were practically invented for this film, using a rig that contained 120 individual digital still cameras and 2 film cameras, and then stitching those still images together to make what has now been used in sporting events and plenty of other types of media going forward. They had tons of action sequence training, both the actual actors and the stunt performers, for months and months and months before the film even started to make sure the action sequences were on point. It won 4 Oscars. This is a movie that to this day, people still reference terms like red pill and blue pill. It has become commonplace even over 20 years later. But the reason that I say that it's the best movie about the apocalypse is because it has us question reality. It has us question why we're all here and what happens after, in a way that I feel like a standard action apocalypse film doesn't even come close to touching. When you delve into it and really make it a philosophical and theological question, it makes it frankly horrific. And that's why this film sticks with people to this day.
Whoa, you took it to a deeper level. Thanks, Trish. Trish with The Matrix. Greg, Terminator 2. Greg! Greg Alba, what do you got?
Terminator Dark Fate. That's my pick today. My pick is Terminator 2.
Yes.
I like to build up my answers. So yeah, Terminator 2 is my pick. And this movie to me manages to be a wide variety of things. It's a blockbuster action film. It's a sci-fi film with commentary on the relationship between humans and technology, and it explores themes of sacrifice, survival, and even love. And while it's making sure to be a film that's not just plot-driven, but heavily character-driven. And a lot of these like really heady sci-fi films can be entertaining, they can be exciting, and they can be thought-provoking, but none quite do it as well as keeping a relatability core with its characters. It's very iconic characters, might I add. It's exhilarating, it's intense with its action scenes, its effects still hold up to this day. It's at times menacing and scary, it's intelligent, has a lot of heart, and there are iconic scenes that still to this day, when I watch it, I am moved to tears. And at times it's also really funny. And I guess the reason why I chose this one was because I love this film a lot, because even though it's got a lot of big things on its mind underneath everything, it's all in service of the characters. The characters' goals throughout are about preventing Judgment Day. And along the way, the main characters have complete arcs. And they're like totally different people by the end of this movie. And because of the mission that they set out on to prevent the apocalypse, they walk away with a deeper understanding on the value and hope that lies within humanity. So, Terminator, The Rise of the Machines.
Right on. Terminator 2, Judgment Day. 3 awesome movies. Fight it out, please.
Okay, so for Star Trek First Contact, out of the 3 movies that we've said, and these are awesome movies, I love rewatching these movies all the time, but out of the 3 mentioned, the only one that actually solidifies the approach of preventing the apocalypse is Star Trek First Contact. Because Matrix, not only is it not prevented, it's just like in progress. We know that there's 2 more movies, and even the end of, the 3rd movie is just everywhere. Agents are let go. I mean, they're just off into the wild. An apocalypse is not prevented. Terminator 2, we know that they did not prevent the apocalypse. They postponed it, and we know that in the absolute next movie because everything goes to crap in Rise of the Machines. So with preventing the apocalypse, Star Trek First Contact is the only one that actually accomplishes that.
I would like to point out that the question is the best movie about preventing or surviving the apocalypse. And The Matrix is most definitely surviving the machine apocalypse. How are humans still moving in this world? So I do not think that disqualifies our 2 answers. If we're going to go into what makes the best film, because I agree with you, MARKEIA, I do think that these are all excellent choices. They're all movies that I personally enjoy, so it's very hard to sit here and be like, this movie's not good, because that would be a lie coming out of my mouth. But the things that I will say as far as what we're talking all good, which one is the best? For Star Trek First Contact, I would say that I don't think it deals with the why, with the what comes after, as well as the other 2. And because of that, it doesn't feel like a real threat. To me,
Well, because think about it. We know the force of the Borg, and we have run into this numerous times before this movie happens. So they are completely successful in eradicating the Borg, not only in the past, but in the future, because they eradicated the Borg in the past when they went back to Earth to do that. So how is it that you're saying that this isn't a great movie for preventing and then also surviving the apocalypse? Because if you want a second layer on it, the Earth is in a type of stasis where they had to survive numerous, like it was like nuclear winter and all these land wars and everything. And so they're surviving what they thought was the apocalypse. The Borg come down to deliver the actual apocalypse, and then the intrepid crew of the Star Trek Enterprise actually end up preventing that. So it prevents and survives, and it's a kick-ass movie.
The thing about Star Trek, though, that I feel with First Contact, I think that is one of the best movies in the franchise. I think that's a fact. I don't think it's one of the best. I don't think it's the best movie. And I also think that was actually the first Star Trek movie I saw in the theaters, and I didn't watch the shows or anything. And if you don't have the pre-existing knowledge of the show, I think I'll give you that. I think it works better as a mainstream movie than most of the Star Trek movies. However, I was still like detached for a lot of it, and I still didn't really fully appreciate it because I was very evident while I was watching it that this feels like I need to have watched the show in order to appreciate this movie. And I think it's also a film that probably could have gone deeper. Star Trek is really known for its sci-fi explorations, and that movie kind of, I feel like, sacrifices a lot of that to be more of a popcorn action fun film, which it is. It's really fun. It's really entertaining and thrilling, but I feel like in terms of exploration of the effects of the apocalypse, I don't really feel that there. And as far as The Matrix is actually my favorite. Terminator 2 and The Matrix are tied for my favorite movies. So the thing, though, with The Matrix of why I prefer Terminator 2 is The Matrix to me is very thought-provoking. It has a lot on its mind, but not a lot here. And for those who are listening, I'm pointing to my heart right now. It's not very emotionally driven, I think. It's a lot of exposition, it's a lot of world building, and it's really cool. Like, it's a cool movie. But I don't really feel that much investment in like a character journey. There's nothing in there that's really going to move me to tears. There's nothing in there that's really going to get my pulse pounding other than, wow, this is really interesting. This is really fascinating. This is some cool philosophical world building. Whereas Terminator 2, I think kind of combines actually both elements. Now I think about it, it combines both elements, I think, of what your movie provides and what my movie provides. What's funny is that all of our movies also deal with artificial intelligence to a certain degree.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that's usually the best apocalypse scenario.
We're always talking here.
Yeah, but with Terminator 2, I mean, bringing it back to what you were saying with Star Trek First Contact with having to set up world building, you chose a sequel within a series. So there has to be a suspension of belief and a jumping over hurdles that has to happen to be able to get into that world anyway. While with Star Trek First Contact, I mean, you have some powerhouses in there. You have Sir Patrick Stewart. You have Alfred Woodard as Lily. I mean, you have these powerhouses that are establishing this world for you. This is extremely character driven. Not only with that, but with the technology is easily accessible because you have Lily as the entrance into your world. She is likable, she is fierce, but she's also she's standoffish until she embraces the world. While when you look at that for these other two movies, I mean, like I said, love these movies, but like with Matrix, you have Neo, and he's just kind of blank, and you kind of have to paste yourself onto him.
Yeah, he's the everyman, which has been a huge keystone of storytelling since the Greek theater.
I think it's the best choice.
Matrix is more of an observant piece, I feel. Yeah. And it's a fascinating observant piece. I love the movie.
And you mentioned earlier Matrix not having heart or anything that kind of brings emotion into it for you. I think precisely because Neo is that everyman that we can all put our own selves into, we go on this journey with him to find out what is humanity. What makes us humans besides our intellect?
You guys, this is a great conversation, great debate. I'm enjoying the heck out of listening to it. But let's shift gears to final thoughts, and we'll start with MARKEIA.
Okay, so yes, this is all about what is the best movie about preventing or surviving the apocalypse. Like I said, Star Trek First Contact hits both of those. You have an established community that you feel that you are a part of. Even if you don't know the Starship Enterprise and their crew, you feel like you are a part of them. It's because of the actors. It's because of the cinematography. It's because of everything wrapped together that you get involved. You are not only preventing, but you're also surviving the apocalypse at the same exact time. I literally cannot think of a better movie out of the ones that we've chosen to be able to show someone, no matter the age range, to be like, hey, this is what we can do. We can survive. We can prevent. This is how we rule the apocalypse.
Thank you, Markeia. Trish.
When we talk about a wonderful apocalypse-related movie, whether it's preventing or surviving, I think some of the things that make it hit home for audiences everywhere are that the apocalypse could be something that we brought on ourselves through our own failing and our own journey, and we can see how that realistically happens. And then it's even more of an excellent story if it's a story that we can then save ourselves from. And I say we, meaning humankind. So what I will say against Star Trek First Contact is that it's an alien invasion. That's something that's out of our control, so I feel like it just doesn't make it as weighty of an apocalypse story. What I will say about Terminator 2 Judgment Day, which again, I love that movie, I do feel like you could argue that maybe something is lacking in that it's a machine that comes to save us. It's not we who find the solution and save ourselves. The Matrix is the one film where, yes, we've got this great philosophical question. We can clearly see how we've gotten to this apocalyptic future where we are just being used as batteries and we don't even know what humanity is anymore. And then we find it within ourselves to break free of this apocalyptic artificial intelligence that we're in and find out what that core thing means of what it is to be human and what it is to survive and live. We have all that in the Matrix, plus we have the philosophy, plus we have the amazing special effects, plus the performances, plus the cinematography, plus the action sequences. Matrix is hands down the best apocalypse film.
Thank you, Trish. Greg, for Terminator 2.
Yeah, every time it gets brought up, I'm going to laugh now. While I think The Matrix is certainly iconic, I don't think it holds up as well as it once did. It's thought-provoking, it's mind-bending, but the emotional experience is kept at a distance. Even like with Trinity and Neo in the movie, it just feels cheesy now and forced and not earned. I think when you get to some of the effects, too, are still good, but there's a lot of them, especially with the Sentinels, that just look really bad now. And Star Trek, I still do believe it requires other like a show in order to really be invested into it. And you brought up the point about how this is a Terminator 2. This is a part 2. Star Trek First Contact is way into Star Trek at that point. And James Cameron intentionally made Terminator 2 where you don't have to watch the first one. Or he specifically stated that. And I had seen Terminator 2 at least 3 times before I ever saw Terminator 1. And I also think both of your movies actually ape a lot of Terminator 2 for a reason. If you look at The Matrix, it's about finding the chosen one in order to save the world against AI. And if you take out the characters of Trinity, Neo, Morpheus, you pretty much got the T-800, Sarah Connor and John Connor, and the Liquid Terminators like the Agent Smith character. And I think my characters are much more relatable, more emotional, have a lot more iconic scenes. Like that scene with Arnold at the end when he sacrifices himself, like Neo is superhuman program Jesus in that movie, right? And so I don't think it's a detriment to say it's a machine that saves us when at the end of Terminator, you cry for that machine. And there's a father-son dynamic. There's this beautiful, iconic performance from Linda Hamilton as Sarah Connor in that movie. And I think with Star Trek First Contact, they definitely ape the time travel element of having to go back in time to save the world against this AI. So when I think of the apocalypse context, bringing it back to the question, it's a cool theme because the apocalypse affects the human race, each and every one of us. It's it's a more inspiring note to me for a movie to end on not super Jesus or people of the Enterprise yet again save the day, but on how we work together as a whole. That's the whole point of Linda Hamilton's closing speech. And so, yeah, I mean, I also think there's also a gray area that they explore with all our films deal with technology. And I think there's a gray area that's explored with not all technology is going to be bad. And at the end of the day, what matters is how we are as a collective, as a species, as humans. And Terminator ends on that button.
Time. Yeah. All right. Wow. This was wonderful. This was wonderful.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Everybody brought A game. Dan Murrell, what's going on in the Fact Zone?
Yeah, I was just doing some checking. I couldn't find the statement from James Cameron saying he probably made it. It's hard to find about not having to see the first one. He did make Terminator 2 purposely ambivalent about who the villain was, which was then given away in the trailers and the commercials, making that whole first 30 minutes pointless on his part. Unfortunately, that's the dangers of marketing, kids. Luckily, the franchise only did that every other time they made a movie. Couple Star Trek things. The question of the Borg saving not just Earth, but the galaxy. No concrete evidence that when the Borg traveled back through time that they traveled beyond Earth, although it could be supposed that they did, but not a confirmation, but not a denial there, just something that's not stated explicitly in the movie. And then the Borg, while the Borg that traveled back through time were defeated, the Borg themselves continue to exist in the future of the Trek franchise, notably in Star Trek Voyager and in some other places. The Borg Queen came back for some TV appearances. So those specific Borg were killed in the past, but the Borg themselves in the future lived on and continued to be foes of the Federation.
Well played, Dan Murrell, one of the preeminent Star Trek fans I know. Thank you, sir. Okay, so this was a slam bang, knockdown, drag out debate. You guys, again, it's entertaining to be privy to it. I'm lucky to be sitting at this table. But we got to get down to brass tacks and pick a winner here. So MARKEIA, I loved your choice, and I think it's brilliant, but I felt like we leaned a little bit into some of the semantics of the question about preventing or surviving and how your movie was relevant to that, but we didn't go as hard at it being the best overall film. So at the end of the day, it came down to Trish and Greg for me, and you guys were trading blows nonstop.
These are my favorite movies. So I was like, oh.
Yeah, and Greg, you landed a couple of haymakers at the end there with, like, some of the FX don't quite hold up. Some of the performances are a little bit stilted now. But Trish, you just listed so many great qualities of the movie. Greg, you were swaying me, but then I felt like your argument focused a little too much about the heart, the soul, and the meaning of the film, and you didn't hit the bombast enough. The effects, James Cameron's action sequences are some of the best I've seen in my lifetime, and they're from freaking, 92? Or I probably got the year wrong. But, so because your argument was so centric to that, and Trish hit the effects, the philosophy, and various elements of the film that brought it 4 Oscars, just by a smidge, I gotta go Trish. Dan.
Yeah, it was tough for me too, but I went a little bit of a different way. I love Star Trek First Contact. It is probably my favorite Star Trek movie. You're up there in my first 2 or 3. But for the arguments, it was between Trish and Greg for me, and I was leaning toward Trish for those same reasons. She definitely heaped on the fact that it's beyond just the apocalypse and the characters, but the cinematography, the effects, and everything. Like, that was a very compelling argument. But for me, in the end, Greg won me over with the idea of tying it all around this fact. First of all, I thought he defended his movie very well. The idea that, like, no, it's not just a machine. It's using a machine and the progression of that character and what it meant, and about humanity, about human nature. I thought he really put into perspective the ways that the apocalypse itself wasn't just an event, that it was used in a larger sense in the movie. His closing actually did a lot for me to landing those for me. So my vote actually goes to Greg, I think. But it was not an easy decision. Very, very good arguments all around.
Right on. Okay, so we got 1-1. Danielle, make some sense of this, please.
All right, let me go ahead and refresh so I can get the top. Alrighty, at 61% of the vote, Terminator 2 Judgment Day, 27% of the vote, The Matrix, 10% for First Contact. Some of the other ones that people were mentioning, Dogma got a lot of love, Shaun of the Dead, This Is the End, Mad Max. A lot of people super bummed out that no one picked The Road.
You would have picked, would you pick Shaun of the Dead, Dan?
I actually might have picked The World's End.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah, actually.
Another Edgar Wright movie, but that I really
This
like.
is the end was my backup.
Oh, This Is the End is so damn funny. That movie deserves love. I was also thinking of Children of Men is pretty damn good.
I saw your thumbs up, Danielle.
All I want from my movies now. I want a robot to give thumbs up. That's all that matters.
Right. Oh, yeah, as he's sinking in. Yep. All right, so Greg is up 1-0. Trisha, MARKEIA looking to get on the board. Here's question number 2. All right, we're going to have some monsters at the theaters this weekend. Godzilla, King of the Monsters. Kaijus are back, opening this weekend. What franchise should do a crossover movie where the heroes have to take on Godzilla? What franchise should do a crossover where the heroes should have to take on Godzilla? Question 2. Let's start with player 2. Trish.
I feel like this is an out-of-the-box pick, and so I'm going to have to fight uphill here, but I went with Stranger Things, having a Stranger Things crossover with Godzilla. Obviously, this is something that kind of people have been having fun with, and I know I've been having fun with online because Millie Bobby Brown is in both of them, so like, what would happen if? But I love a fantastic underdog protagonist. When you look at movies like The Neverending Story, the Harry Potter franchise, anytime you have kids that have to save the world, it sets you up for a wonderful film that audiences everywhere will enjoy. So having this specific cast of characters have to go up against Godzilla, we have already seen them tackle 2 different monsters from other dimensions. So they are familiar with dealing with the monster mayhem. The 11 has tons of abilities, because I know people are going to say they stand no chance. Godzilla survived a nuke. What are you even doing, Trisha? They're just you're promoting child slaughter, because that's what's going to happen in this movie. However, based on what we know about Eleven's psychokinetic abilities, I'll use that word, they're linked to her emotions. So should her friends or anyone be in danger, that's going to explode out and become even more powerful. She's got ESP, telekinesis, telepathy, portal manipulation to the upside down, dimensional travel, technopathy, psychometry, biokinesis, and potentially teleportation. So I do think that they would stand a chance, and they've got a nice party, a nice adventuring party of characters with the heart and the brains and the defense cautious one, and then the OP chick coming in with the superpower. So I think it would make a fantastic film.
All right, Trisha promoting child slaughter with Stranger Things. Greg, what do you got?
All those definitions about Eleven's powers, I'm like, yeah, I know what all that. I totally know that. I actually saw Godzilla, King of the Monsters recently, and it has pretty much the same issue that I feel most of these monster movies have, which are boring, crappy, cheesy human characters, right? MARKEIA, I saw that look. We'll talk about Godzilla afterwards.
Okay.
Anyways, and thinking about this question, I wanted to go with something that we could see blended, but also not be obvious, and still lend itself to an instantly appealing character. So I went with the Evil Dead franchise. Right off the bat, you get a wonderful leading human character in the form of Bruce Campbell as Ash. And even though it's had its movies, it had its Ash vs. Evil Dead show, I still think you could pick it up after the events of the final season of Ash vs. Evil Dead. And I like this choice because while you got this wisecracking alcoholic smartass, he's battled all kinds of supernatural creatures, but he's never battled a giant. He's never battled like a kaiju or anything like that enormous before. And I think it would lend itself to a hard R horror comedy, which I think would be great for this. These big monster films, the human stuff usually feels corny or boring, and they often have humor that just lands flat. And the great thing about the Evil Dead franchise is that when it's cheesy, it works. That's a rare quality. And these monster films need to be scary, and the other side of Evil Dead, it's a horror franchise. It can do both for Godzilla. And my basic, like, really quick plot idea would be that Ash is retired with his friends now, chilling in Tokyo, and then one day Godzilla emerges, which forces Ash to have to find a way to defeat this Godzilla. So he'll have to do the one thing he's never had to do before, work with the Evil Dead through the Necronomicon. I call it Ash and the Evil Dead versus Godzilla.
All right. Thank you, Greg.
Like, put it versus Godzilla.
Yeah.
Around the horn to MARKEIA.
Okay, well, one thing that I have a lot of respect for Godzilla. Godzilla movies, yes, they can be campy, but one thing that I don't like is that when Godzilla is nerfed, and if you have Godzilla, and I'm using they just in case it's not a he, I don't know. So with Godzilla, you've got to have a really good hero or heroes going up as a foil against this immensely powerful creature. Keeping in mind, Godzilla, once upon a time, when they were nerfed, had a black hole hit on them and survived. So if your hero can't take a black hole, your hero can't take Godzilla. But I also understand about having the appealing characters and having a franchise that people can get behind, along with having it be powerful enough to take on the beautiful beast that is Godzilla. So that is why I chose the DCEU. And specifically, in the DCEU, I chose Swamp Thing, Green Lantern, Jessica Cruz, and Shazam. Reserving for as I get into my talk with other people from the DCU, but them in particular. Swamp Thing, because Swamp Thing is all about balance of the green, balance of nature, the green versus the black versus the red. And Godzilla, depending on the origins that you're coming from, which one that you're doing it from, is a type of aberration of nature. So therefore, Swamp Thing would want to balance that, would want to justify that balance. Swamp Thing is immensely powerful, depending on which run that you go with that. With Green Lantern, with Jessica Cruz, she would come out and show out, and you have her willpower and her structures to add on to that. Along with this, for the approachable franchise, you have Shazam, which you have the Shazamily. So you have, and I'm just going to say Super Freddy, Super Eugene, Super Darla, you have all of them. So you have that beautiful, like, touchstone of Shazam, of the Shazamily. You have the horror aspect of Swamp Thing taking on Giant Godzilla, along with Green Lantern, Jessica Cruz taking on with structures. In a sense, to add on to this, Warner Brothers and Legendary are making the new Godzilla. Warner Brothers is DCU. I don't know why this hasn't been made already. I want to see it right now.
All right, a match made in studio heaven right there. Fight it out, everybody.
All right.
I don't want to kill children, and that is what will happen.
You're killing children.
Shazam!
Hello?
Shazam, yes. You say Shazam and you become a superhero family. As opposed
But
to
you're
you have
still a
one
kid.
person. You have one person, and if anything happens to her, and we can even see at the end of season 2, Stranger Things, like she like pops out herself. Like she's like out for the count, nosebleed like out. She can't take on Godzilla, and the rest of them are literally kids. What are they gonna do? Rap battle Godzilla? It's not possible.
And would you have Millie Bobby Brown, like she's already in Godzilla King of the Monsters, if this is following up King of the
Maybe
Monsters?
they're twins separated at birth and they find each other in the next
Chestnut.
discover their powers. You know, go with it. It could be really fun. I like that connection. But I would say that, yes, we have seen that 11 takes a little bit of a hit when she uses her powers. However, we've also seen from season 1 to season 2, her powers are getting stronger and she's taking less and less of a hit, and her powers are more sustainable each time.
This is
so
Godzilla,
it serves to believe that moving forward, again, she's taken down 2 monsters from other dimensions already, and she has the ability to travel into other dimensions. Who's to say she couldn't put Godzilla in the Upside Down? And game over. And that's how they all work together to figure it out, because she's not one person. She's got a team. In addition to the other kids, in addition to Mike and Dustin and Lucas, she's got Joyce Harper giving that mother's love into the film.
Mother's love.
She's got Jim Hopper. She's got the anti-hero.
If she wanted to, defeat, the detrimentalness of the public education system, sure. She's got the stuff that she can do, but against a giant.
Again, you guys are missing the link where 11's powers are tied to her emotion. So that's why I'm harping on the emotion with the other characters. Now, if we're going to talk about who can or cannot defeat Godzilla, Godzilla survived a nuke. So, MARKEIA, when you were like DCEU, I was like, all right, Superman, yeah, I got this. Wonder Woman, yeah, she got this. But you picked Swamp Thing,
yes,
the
who was immensely powerful,
and Jessica Cruz. Where have we seen that any of them have nuclear capabilities?
The Shazam family definitely has that. Absolutely. And not only that, Swamp Thing most definitely does. Swamp Thing cannot be killed. Literally, spores from Swamp Thing ended up on the moon, and he was able to regenerate from those. He can't. And he can multiply in size and in strength because he is literally a force of nature. My thing with this, for heroes taking on Godzilla, is that not only does it take these particular heroes to then put them more into the mainstream, it's able to do the power set. But keeping in mind, I didn't just name these three. I said the DCEU. So as the movie progresses, yes, I am going to bring in the Justice League when giant arch nemesis of Godzilla, Ghidorah, shows up.
I kind of had a little bit of an opposite reaction to you, where I felt like there would be limited conflict with if the Shazamily is pretty much a Superman character. And like you saw in BV and the DCEU, I'm not talking comic books, like the DCEU, you'd see Wonder Woman, Batman, and Superman defeat Doomsday. I think if you have Green Lantern, the Shazam, all the Shazam characters, Swamp Thing, to me, it doesn't really lend itself to a movie that will have real stakes. I feel like and especially if you include the Justice League in there, because it's just going to be a lot of powers all hitting,
like doing too much.
It's all too much. Everyone's hitting Godzilla. It's the same. It's honestly the same kind of movie. Just instead of kaiju, you just got other people demonstrating their powers.
It's not all of them against Godzilla. Like I said, it's the arch nemesis, and I keep on mispronouncing his name. It's Ghidorah. That's the three-headed Hydra, like the super arch nemesis. It's like once the Shazam land, and keeping in mind that you have, like, by that time they're like, oh, I don't think we can take this. We've tried. Darla's like, I thought I was fast enough, but I'm not. I'm sorry, I'm not a good sister. And they're like, yes, you are. And Eugene, hits with the Hadouken, and you have that. You have Swamp Thing with this angsty Shakespeare thing, and all of them coming together. Green Lantern with Jessica Cruz holding down Godzilla, and then they're all battling them, and it's like, oh yes, we won. And then here comes the three-headed Hydra, and they're like, oh crap. And then it's like they have to actually bond with Godzilla to take on that three-headed Hydra, because keeping in mind that Godzilla movie, it's the Titans. Like, they have so much more. They have Mothra in there. They have I think they have Rodan in there. So they have a lot more than that.
Greg, I haven't heard a ton from you about Evil Dead since the opening. I'd love to hear a little bit more.
The thing with these movies is, like, Stranger Things does lend itself to honestly, a crossover with Godzilla, I feel like would be I feel like it would be a fine Godzilla movie, but it wouldn't be a satisfactory Stranger Things movie. I feel like you'd totally lose that. And with these characters, I'm like, we've seen these heroes battle big, giant supervillains. This is a different version now in the form of a kaiju. With Evil Dead, I think you get something totally different for the Godzilla franchise. I imagine you could do a sequence where the Deadites, what they do is they infect humans, and the Deadites can infect take over Godzilla. So you essentially have like a Godzilla Deadite in there, and they can do that with other kaiju as well. And one of the fun things is with the way they always taunt Ash in it. So you could have like this weird kind of scary comedy where you got these kaiju who are also psychologically taunting Ash throughout the film. And I even would borrow a little bit from that. Like the Roland Emmerich one is bad, but I would like kind of correct it a little bit where Godzilla does have some babies, and then he has to fight all these other different kinds of Godzilla babies throughout. It would just be wacky and weird and fun. Whereas with Stranger Things, yeah, I've seen them battle monsters before. It's just, and to me, I'm like, whenever you take a TV show and make it into a movie, it's not satisfactory. Stranger Things works because it's a TV show. You get time.
Shift gears and go to final thoughts. Trish.
Final thoughts for me are that, you said Ash would be retired, so are we going like the Mission Impossible Fallout route where he's like, oh man, I gotta do this. I'm so old now. Also, you said it yourself that he's never battled a monster before, so that presents problems. And you also said when it works because it's cheesy in relation to the Evil Dead, but you said that the other movies don't work because they're cheesy. You said they're problematic because the heart makes them, the characters are too cheesy and underwritten. So I'm just pointing out that crossover. We talked to MARKEIA quite a bit about which DCEU characters were going to be in there. And when you said the Justice League was going in, then I'm going to say Aquaman's too OP. Why can't he just mind control Godzilla and then it's end over a game of movie? End of game movie. So I'm again going with Stranger Things because, as you actually pointed out, Greg, earlier in the argument, one of the things that makes a lot of monster movies and action movies kind of fall flat for people is that they have very two-dimensional characters, two-dimensional character interactions, and romances or friendships that we don't necessarily buy, believe in, or care about. Stranger Things, we already have that chemistry. Again, we have the underdog protagonist that people are going to be rooting for. And MARKEIA brought up a film that everyone can enjoy everywhere. When you have kids as your protagonist, this is a film that people are going to be enjoying everywhere. Whether it's a scary Godzilla monster, as long as kids know that kids can defeat it, nightmare's done.
Nightmare's done, kids can defeat it. Greg.
I'm not exactly sure what you were talking about with the underwritten thing I was talking about, because I don't recall exactly saying that. I was mentioning that the monster films, they take themselves really serious and let themselves to unintentional cheese. I think when you're intentional about it, you can still have nuance and layers. And one of the cool things about the Evil Dead franchise is whenever you catch up with Ash, he's at a different point in his life. And there's something about the Evil Dead that always brings him out of retirement. And that's an element that I would want to toy around with, because the Evil Dead always bring him out. So I think it would be fun to have him be forced to try to work with the Evil Dead in this movie. And I also think that, unlike your guys' movies, mine could be a hard R. Like Godzilla actually going around destroying cities, killing people. It could be violent and very gory, menacing, scary. There could be a lot of wacky zaniness included. I think you could have this like weird bitchin', like to quote like something Bruce Campbell would say, like bitchin' finale, where he works with some spell with the Necronomicon. That's how you say it. And where he makes himself with his boomstick shotgun, his chainsaw hand, he makes himself a giant where he has to fight Godzilla one-on-one. And he could be cracking some silly Bruce Campbell tongue-in-cheek jokes, about like size of certain things or whatever. I could just see him cracking like the same Bruce Campbell sarcasm throughout, which would be a total blast to see. Stranger Things, to me, that works. Like, we saw what happened with Game of Thrones when they condensed it into 6 episodes. It was rushed, unsatisfactory, and Stranger Things would fall prey to the similar thing. If you have all these characters, one of the best things about Stranger Things is the fact that you get to have multiple villains. You get to have multiple character explorations that span over the course of many episodes. You try to condense a Stranger Things journey into one movie, it just will not satisfy. It will feel like a rushed TV one-off episode. And for the DCEU going up against Godzilla, I just have a hard time seeing how there's a real conflict there. Like, even with what Trisha just brought up with Aquaman controlling the monsters in the ocean, he could control Godzilla. It would just be another like hit him movie. That's it. Just another superhero just punch him movie. But not really anything I just don't feel the stakes with your film, when I feel like 3 of them are enough to take down Godzilla. You don't even need the whole Justice League to do it.
All right, thank you, Greg. MARKEIA.
So Godzilla is an aberration of nature, so Aquaman cannot control him. It's not a possibility. It's not even on the table. Also with having the Shazamily, that hits the kids' note of being able to be on board with like that level of it, but then they also turn into superheroes. The reason why Swamp Thing Green Lantern and Shazam, and specifically Jessica Cruz Green Lantern, which is a newer Green Lantern, were chosen because their power levels would actually match and be a good battle for Godzilla. The actual Justice League coming in later is when the 3-headed Hydra comes in, and there's the whole Titans thing. I know you haven't seen my movie yet, but that's how it is. But when I think Godzilla, I am so tired of like campiness with it. With Godzilla, I want a monster movie. I get my comedy and my fun from the people on the ground, for the people that are battling Godzilla, not through him. And I need for those people to be able to be heroes enough and be powered enough to be able to actually make me believe that they can take him on and that they can win until an even bigger threat, comes up, and then it's like, oh, now they're bonding with Godzilla because, yeah, we're its pets. Their pets, to then take on this greater threat. So that's why I don't want an Ash in there, because it's just not enough power. Even with Deadites, it's just not enough power for Godzilla to then also do the rest of the Titans that always seem to follow Godzilla in general. So yeah, let's have lesser known DCEU characters continue with the extended universe with things, because it doesn't all have to be connected. It just all has to be fun and powerful.
All right, time. Good stuff, you guys. Dan, please take us to the fact zone and then give us your thoughts on this question.
Sure. The black hole gun or weapon is from the year 2000's Godzilla versus Megagyrus. I'm sure I'm not getting that pronunciation correct, but
There's
yes,
so many
they shot miniature black holes at Godzilla. He was able to extricate himself from one and then destroy it with his atomic breath. So
Black hole gun. Sorry.
Thank you.
Nice.
The question of Aquaman, I have devoted a healthy amount of the last part of this question. The question of whether Aquaman could mind control Godzilla is a very interesting one because Aquaman's mental marine telepathy has been used in many ways over the years. It used to be just marine animals for a while. They said that because humankind shares an evolutionary chain with marine animals, then he could do certain things with human beings. There was a time where he could do stuff with Superman, but then the New 52 refined it a little bit more. I did find there was a creature called Topo, which is a kaiju-sized creature that Aquaman did use his marine telepathy to control. However, it was such a strain on his mind that it put him in a 6-month coma. Ooh. But MARKEIA actually, I think, opened up the gray area in that argument that needed to be opened up, which is that it seems like it's always based on nature, the fact that he is able to connect with animals in the animal kingdom, the fact that Godzilla is an aberration of nature by his origin could, I think, factually negate Aquaman's marine telepathy. So I have to say it's probably very likely that MARKEIA is correct in that it's unlikely that Aquaman could manipulate Godzilla telepathically.
Wow.
I love this train of thought so much.
Dan,
We have a new video to do, Danielle.
Dan, that's some damn good fact checking.
Aquaman control Godzilla.
Yes, it does. All right.
I'm sure there'll be plenty of people that disagree with me, but
Oh, sure.
that's what I can do on
Wait,
short notice.
on the internet? What? Okay, please.
We'll never disagree
Always
there.
read the comments.
Yeah, Stranger Things just never quite. It was more like 11 versus Godzilla, and
Yeah.
I love that like the power of a strong mother is great, but I just don't know how that would do against Godzilla.
Yeah,
Like,
those kids. Kaiju food. Yeah.
I like Joyce's heart. I love her heart, but I just don't know how that would match up to Godzilla. So it was between Greg and MARKEIA for me, and I think, man, I love that take with Ash and but honestly, the Godzilla has little Godzillas, and then Ash is fighting the little guy. There was too much. I know that you tried to diffuse it, Grace. Too much Godzilla 98 for me. And MARKEIA did a really good job at talking about how the different powers would interact in the future, where the franchise would go.
Knew I should have cut that
I would go. I'm going with MARKEIA on this one. I think that it was a factually strong argument, and I think. Ash was such a good idea, but by that much, I'm going with MARKEIA.
Right on. Okay, so that's one for MARKEIA. Yeah, I feel similarly as far as the Stranger Things stuff. I'm sorry. Yeah, it did feel like 11 versus Godzilla. I feel like a lot of the Stranger Things stuff would get, and I think those kids would end up kaiju food. And it came down to MARKEIA and Greg for me. And oh man, that image of giant Ash going up against Godzilla is pretty epic. But everything else, like, it became kind of a little bit too much for me. There's so much going.
That's fair.
Yeah, there's a lot going on there, and I love that tone. But I don't know. There's something that spoke to me. I don't know. It's totally different. But your description of all the heroes versus the kaiju and Godzilla reminded me. Just I don't know. It took me to an old team up of G.I. Joe versus Transformers back in the '80s, which is like these big things and these little guys and. I don't know. It just took my mind there, but I really liked. I like the nuts and bolts of your movie, of your pitch, and I could see it happening. I'm also going MARKEIA. So MARKEIA gets the point.
Yay!
Danielle, what'd the poll say?
Oh, just barely. It was 38% for The Evil Dead, 37% for DCEU, 23% for Stranger Things. A lot of people were really wanting Detective Pikachu to fight Godzilla.
Okay.
Like all the Pokemon, like
That
they
could
bond
work.
together. Like
Sometimes
maybe,
Pokemon, but mostly
maybe
just Detective Pikachu. They just really want Rodent to get squashed. And then also a lot of votes for Captain Planet.
Oh.
Well, he's our hero.
I would watch that.
I mean, they both have that environmental message, so yeah, that makes some sense. Thank you, Danielle. All right,
You
so
tied it in, Hal.
Markeia's got 1 point, Greg's got 1 point, Trisha trying to tie up this ball game, and we go to question number 3. So between Good Omens and Godzilla, if the apocalypse was upon us, we ask, what movie character would you want leading your group of post-apocalyptic survivors? Who would you want leading your group? And we start with player number 3, Greg.
When I thought of this question, I was thinking specifically about leadership with this, okay? So I actually picked someone who I've argued for on this show before, Ethan Hunt from the Mission Impossible franchise. I think it's easy to choose a character who's the most badass, who's the most lethal, or a survivor, which I do think he actually has all those qualities which have been demonstrated throughout the franchise. He's been shown as a constant survivor through crazy danger. Every Mission Impossible movie, he's forced in pretty much every movie to go rogue, or he's by himself, or he recruits a few people along with him who are practically facing their own self-contained apocalypse because they're at risk of dying all the time by being rogue. He's always being thrown into insane, harsh conditions where he's forced to figure out a way to survive or keep someone else alive. And he's demonstrated, and I think this is very important, he's incredibly good with people. He's loving, and you actually really need that in a leader. You need someone who refuses to lose or sacrifice someone else for the greater good. Someone who can give you hope while facing the impossible. He clearly has training and studying and dealing with human beings in a psychological sense, which will come in handy when you're dealing with strange folk in a post-apocalyptic world. You're going to get some crazies out there. You need someone who knows how to handle those kind of people. And I also think that with his IMF training, and this is a really important thing to me about leadership too, in MI3, it shows that he was a teacher at one point. He would be great at teaching people how to survive in the apocalypse. A great leader doesn't only show up to protect you. He doesn't only show up to make sure you're safe and look after you. He has to be able to instill enough skills in you that if he happens to not be around, you have enough skills obtained from him where you can still survive. So to me, in terms of leadership, he's the best pick.
Ethan Hunt, Mission Impossible, leading Greg's pack. Markeia, who do you got?
Okay, so the movie character that I would want leading my personal group of post-apocalyptic survivors, I want someone that does not rely heavily on technology, someone that is able to stand on their own 2 feet, that can go up against any kind of technology that you can throw at them, that has been at the level of people that you wouldn't think would be able to survive in the first 2 months. Forget the first 6 months. I want someone that was at that level and then grew into an epic, lethal badass that not only has contingency plans while they're alive, has contingency plans for after they're dead, to take care of the people that are left behind. And that is why I chose Sarah Connors. And actually, I'm really glad that the first round went to Terminator 2, because Sarah Connors is the best picked for survivors. She was an elemental force in Terminator 2, and keeping in mind that is just bridging the gap from Terminator, like the original one, to that sequel. Having her be the leader of a post-apocalyptic group, it's like, that keeps me warm at night. That's warm milk during a cold night right now, because she would shape us. And that's the thing that you need, because none of us are hard enough to survive. We think that we are. She would show us the way, and she wouldn't get tired of us. She wouldn't leave us behind. Sarah Connors.
All right, Markeia going with Sarah Connor, singular.
I'm sorry, Sarah Connor.
worries.
John Connor, Sarah Connor.
Yes.
All the Sarah Connors.
All the Connors.
In the first Terminator, he was going through the phone book. There were multiple Sarah Connors.
That is true.
Ended up with poor fates. Markeia, thank you, Sarah Connor. Trish.
Again, I went outside the box with my picks for this one. I did not
so
draw
crazy.
from a traditionally apocalyptic film.
Yeah.
I decided to go with Aragorn from the Lord of the Rings franchise, because just in a different way.
Crazy stuff going on in Mordor.
Sci-fi tech way. But I decided to go with Aragorn specifically for leadership qualities, like Greg mentioned earlier. I mean, who has greater leadership qualities than who ultimately becomes the king of the next age. He also has survival skills. He's a ranger. He can live off, if there is no technology, he can not only live off the land and survive it, but hunt and track for new sustenance. He can pass on his skills to others. Greg mentioned passing on skills and leading the next and training the next generation, as we saw him do with both Mary and Pip in the films. He has amazing diplomacy skills, so not everything has to come to blows because he's a good dude and he's got heart. Again, he's a great leader because he's the leader that doesn't want to be the leader. As we know, because he took the name Strider and Thorngill many times to not have to face that he is the heir to rule, because he doesn't want it. But that's precisely why he's the best one for it. Again, not power hungry at all. He's also Numenorian, so he has a much longer lifespan than a normal human. So as far as worrying about dissent amongst the people after he goes, you've got a long time to figure out that game plan. In what we know of the Tolkienverse, when he becomes king, that is the end of the Third Age, and he rebuilt all of Middle-earth into a time and land of peace and prosperity, which, if it's the apocalypse and you're trying to figure out how to survive after, you want someone leading the way that can build back up a survivable, livable, functioning society. And Aragorn can do all of that.
All right, I love how different these three answers are. Fight it out, guys.
The thing with, honestly, Sarah Connor was the first name I wrote down when submitting my answer. The thing that made me not go with Sarah Connor was because I think she'd be a great soldier and a great person to have on your team.
I think she's a great general.
In terms of being a leader, she is wildly emotionally unstable.
I don't agree with that at all.
In the movie, when she's trying to get out of the psych unit, she tries to keep her composure. She loses it. The thing with Miles Dyson, she totally went against what they had planned, went after, attacked him, nearly killed Miles Dyson's family in the process of it. And sure, she had a change of heart after she shot him a couple times, but she's someone who has demonstrated several times that she's not good with people. And I think a leader needs to be good with people. She'd be a good, like, Daryl, but she wouldn't be a good Rick Grimes.
She is not a Daryl. That's not a really good analogy to do for Sarah Connor. And then keeping in mind, since I brought in the first movie with it, I'm also bringing in Rise of the Machines, because I did mention that also. I'm doing Sarah Connor in the movie zeitgeist that we know of. So there is a lot of growth that happens to her from the first to the third. And like I said before, I mean, keeping in mind how all three of our characters started off. Ethan Hunt was kind of, can I say douche? He was kind of that, sure. You know? He was practically an adulterous playboy that was, playing around on this team, and then that's why he was the scapegoat for it, because he was...
Are you talking about the first
I'm
movie?
talking about the first Mission Impossible. Are you talking about a specific Ethan Hunt? Because I'm talking about the movie zeitgeist of it.
Yeah, I mean, in the beginning, Ethan Hunt was there, but down the road, he changed into a leader.
Yes, because we're talking about all of Sarah Connor, so we're talking all about Ethan Hunt also. So with that, I mean, and keeping in mind, like I already said, relies heavily on technology. Heavily. Like, I do not see this dude just surviving against, well, let's say zombies or like the wilderness in general. He needs like masks, and he's trying to jump out of planes. We don't know if planes are going to work and everything there. And then talking about Strider. Yes, and like medieval last time with like orcs and stuff, I can see that. But with like the post-apocalypse that I was picturing was the one that we would be existing in present day. And yeah, guns exist. What is dude gonna do against that? I mean, seriously, it's gonna be like a 13-year-old kid that's just gonna take Aragorn out. He's gonna be like, why are you pointing this thing? Boom. Okay, and he's gone.
Have you seen elves use ranged weapon? Aragorn was trained by the elves and has elvish blood within him.
He doesn't know what a Smith and Wesson looks like. That's all I'm saying.
And you actually said in your opening that Aragorn doesn't want to be a leader, and I wouldn't want that guy to be my. I gotta get a couple.
You wouldn't?
I would not.
I want to get a guy who's for most of Lord of the Rings. For most of Lord of the Rings, Viggo Mortensen just seems like depressed and doesn't want to be here.
He doesn't want to be there.
He doesn't want to.
Oh my God!
He's forced into it, and you want someone who's caring and like feels like confident in what they're doing, instead of feeling like, fine. I'll do it.
Okay, there's a big difference between saying, "Ugh, fine, I'll do it," and saying, "I don't want this responsibility because this is an immense responsibility, and I'm thinking about people other than myself."
Can I ask you a
Which I would
question,
say
though?
for both of these. Go
Sarah
ahead.
thinks about
Yeah,
others.
Ask your question.
I just want to ask a question to make sure we're playing completely fair here. You're talking about bringing Aragorn from Middle Earth into like if we had a post-apocalyptic situation, like if we had an apocalyptic, he's from a different world, Middle Earth, and you're bringing him over here.
Or it could be a post-apocalyptic situation there.
Well, which one?
We're talking about a movie here.
Because if it's here, it wouldn't.
can-
I don't think it would work because it's a different landscape and environment, different kind of people.
The question is, what characters you want leading your group of survivors?
So
that
here,
makes
okay.
it today.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and I
Here,
don't think
today.
he would work here.
Okay, great.
I would say that he is skilled in many, many, many different areas. And again, if we're talking here, where it's a post-apocalyptic situation where, say, there's no more electricity or there's no more fuel and people have to survive off the land and go back to that. And what are orcs if not medieval zombies? So if we're talking zombie apocalypse right now, then we are right there in the game. That is what this man is trained to do. Now, when you have people that do rely on modern guns, on modern explosions, if that is taken away from them and they don't have that, which in so many post-apocalyptic films, those things are very scarce, and we do see people battling to get those things because they're not readily available when gasoline is run out, when explosives have run out, then I do think that Aragorn stands the best chance out of all of these people. And you guys are talking about not wanting to be with someone who doesn't want to be a leader. Aragorn does not want to be the leader because he cares too much about other people and doesn't want the responsibility if something horrible happens to them. He does it precisely because he's trained to do exactly those things and therefore is the best at it because there's no power dynamic that comes into play. With Sarah Connor, she is specifically out there, it can be argued, for personal and selfish reasons that she's looking for her own
She's trying
family.
to save the world.
Let's shift gears. Go to final thoughts. Greg, start it off.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the technology argument, we're dealing with our world. So while there might be scarcity and stuff, we'll still have things like cars. We'll still have things like guns. We'll still have these things in our world in a post-apocalyptic situation that characters like Sarah Connor and Ethan Hunt are used to. And Ethan Hunt has demonstrated several times where he's not, maybe he's involved with like, there's a plane or something, but he's not always using technology. And early on in Rogue Nation, there's like a 6-month period where he's on his own. It's that weird moment where he grows a beard. But he's by himself, not being technological reliant on IMF stuff. Like in Mission Impossible 2, even he's mountain climbing without anything, just his own hands. He can do things without relying on technology. Sarah Connor, I'm going to stick with it. She is very much she's unstable. She's someone who gets very emotionally reactive and can make poor decision making. She even pushed away her own son, who was meant to be the leader of the most important human being. She pushed away from this whole journey. And so I don't have faith in her. Ethan and Aragorn, we're in a very different world, very different kind of people. It just wouldn't be the same kind of society. Granted, I think in a post-apocalyptic situation, people devolve. It still wouldn't be in tune at all with what Aragorn is used to, and he doesn't like being a leader. Ethan Hunt, he's demonstrated being a leader at its best. I think to lead people, it's 20% physical, 80% psychological at least. And he's demonstrated that he has the most mental and emotional endurance he can properly pass on. He knows how to properly delegate or utilize the people, because if you got to work together as a unit, and he knows how to inspire people and properly delegate tasks here and there for if they have to go on any missions to stay alive. He knows how to work systematically. He knows how to plan things. He knows how to improvise if things don't go wrong. These are all elements demonstrated throughout the film. And another really important quality is his level of self-confidence that he possesses clearly rubs on to whomever is following him. Sarah Connor, yes, she might toughen you up, but she's not good with people. She wouldn't be someone who would make you feel like better about the future or have some hope. Aragorn's always kind of, gloomy. Ethan Hunt, he's someone where people follow him into the impossible for a reason. He knows when to be stern, knows when to show appreciation. So, that's basically my final thoughts on it.
Thank you, Greg. Around the horn to MARKEIA.
Okay, with Aragon, there's just too much acclamation involved with a post-apocalypse that would happen with us now. America will still have guns, will still have TNT, there will still be plenty of fuel at the beginning of the post-apocalypse. And it's like having to teach this dude, seriously, he shows up here, all I'm thinking is like backwoods, hillbilly or backwoods outdoorsman. It's like, I'm not going to follow him. I'm not. He doesn't know what's going on, and he smells, and it's just weird. It's just, it's not a thing.
Why does he smell?
It's not a thing.
Canon,
That's
Trisha.
a thing. I mean, he smells. While with Ethan Hunt, this pretty boy dude that it's just like I'm not going to follow him either. He's a loner that keeps a very, very small network of people around him. He's going to go into the mountains with Just Ving Rhymes and the really funny British guy. Was it Simon Pegg?
Simon Pegg.
Yeah, that's who he's going with. He's going to take them, and what he does is that he gets people that are followers to then, be with him. While with Sarah Connor, out of the three of us, she's the one that grew from our stock. She was where we are now. She knows that. She is in it to stop the apocalypse. She is in it to save our world. The way that she does that is that she makes leaders, and it is established in the movie zeitgeist that, and you're just focusing on the second movie of Sarah Connor, but it's established that she has a network of people that she relies on. She is a general of a revolution. She went from being a waitress into being that. I mean, and with Rise of the Machines. So not only would she be adept at the technology that we would have, which would be fuel, guns, TNT, and such, and she would know the best places in the country because Homegirl had to travel all around everywhere to keep in front of the machines, to keep John Connor safe. She knows that people are our future, so she would invest in the people, unlike with technology and like trying to figure out this world and I will be king of you. It's like, that's not a thing that we want. That's not a thing that I want to follow with my leader of my post-apocalyptic survivor group.
All right, some say children are our future. She says people are our future. Sarah Connor. Trish, Aragorn.
Aragorn never said, "I will be king of you." That line is not anywhere in the film. In fact, he's the opposite. He doesn't want to be king. I can go on and on and on about the amazing skills of Aragorn, but I figure I'll close with that. Let me just start out with Ethan Hunt, because I didn't say a lot against Ethan Hunt. I do feel like Ethan Hunt intentionally, in the first 5 Mission Impossible movies, doesn't have much of a personality. He's kind of vague on purpose. He's just this guy with borderline superhuman skill set. He can hold his breath for longer than 3 minutes and get through explosions, no problem, not a burn on him. And that's what's so fun about those movies. Not necessarily his heart, his care for the rest of humanity, and his leadership skills. I do think he's very capable, but I don't know that people would follow him because he'll be a good leader after whatever the threat is taken care of or whatnot. When it comes to Sarah Connor, I don't buy into the she's emotionally unstable argument. But you started out your argument by saying that she doesn't need to rely on technology, and then you went on to say how good she is with explosives and guns. Mm-hmm. And she has been trained by really criminals all over the world. So my question is, if we are in an apocalypse where technology is scarce, what is she going to do? I mean, that is the only skill set she's trained in, and she is ultimately looking after her own butt, her own safety, and her own family. Whereas Aragorn, you guys knocked his skill set. You tried to knock his skill set down, but let me just remind you the things that he is skilled in: swordsmanship, horse riding, hunting, stealth, field medicine, and tracking skills, which in any apocalypse film, those are like the primary things that, like, how many people in our world currently can fire a firearm? Even if not well, most people can. How many people have field medic skills? How many people can train? How many people can move stealthy? How many people can track? Those are skills that are going to be the valued, hard to find skill sets, which is why I want those in a leader. Again, he's not power hungry at all. He's the leader because it's put upon him and he's the best trained for it, not because he's power hungry. He's able to train the people who follow him and give them new skills to better survive in this new world. He does have a Numenorian lifespan, which I think could be very important in this film. And the biggest thing I'll say is that he completely rebuilt Middle-earth after the end of the Third Age. to completely rebuild society after everyone has lost all hope, that's what surviving the apocalypse is about.
Bam. All right.
Wow.
Quite a throwdown. Dan.
Sounded like we were really trying to nominate someone.
Dan, take us to the fact zone.
Well, it's weird because my factual things kind of tie into my my judgment on the rounds.
All right, so yeah, give us the whole kit and caboodle then, please.
Well, it really comes down to largely Sarah Connor for me and her role in the films, because I thought MARKEIA had a really strong closing, but I think the facts are a little off because Sarah Connor is not in. She's dead. She died prior to Rise of the Machines, and what we find out, she basically went into seclusion and kept training John after Terminator 2, but then died shortly thereafter. We learned a little bit more about her, and there was the TV show, and then whatever they're going to do with her in Dark Fate. But I really like MARKEIA's closing, but I don't necessarily think we know that about her from the movies, from what we know, because she's gone by the time Rise of the Machines comes up. So I had to sort of pull back on that angle. And looking at it, there's something that Greg actually said that I think he was trying to use to bolster his argument, but I think ended up working against him, which is when he said that it's 80% psychological and 20% physical, when he's talking about Ethan Hunt. But I think that actually works best for Trisha's argument. And honestly, also it seemed like so much of the argument against Aragorn was about guns and guns and technology and guns and guns and guns, and like that's one point, but that seemed to be like 80% of the argument against Aragorn, whereas Trisha made a very good, I thought, compelling argument about leadership quality, inspiring hope, rebuilding. Like these are all elements of the apocalypse as well. So I think largely because of her arguments, and also because I felt like so many of the arguments against her were focused on this one element, whereas I felt her argument to be a lot broader. My vote goes for Trisha and Aragorn.
That's one for Trish. Yeah, I thought there were compelling arguments from everybody. The Ethan Hunt argument, he's got such a skill set, but then I think it might have been Trish that said that he felt like it was just like, oh, he's like a superhuman guy. Yeah. So it came down to MARKEIA and Trish for me. We're dealing with this general. She's also a survivalist, and MARKEIA touched on how she like journeyed across the country being chased by Terminators. And Trish gave us this like a really stellar breakdown of these leadership skills that would be tactile. But I feel like I felt like that was a huge blow, though, the fact that he's from another time and just the simple acclimation to this world. And we're dealing with one kind of apocalypse. There could be, like, who knows what the access to machinery and cars, guns will be in this post-apocalyptic world. So that is not a finite element that we're dealing with. So the results of the poll are in. And Trisha with Aragorn takes the point. That means, this is a great moment in sports. This is a three-way tie. We're going to the tiebreaker, folks. And the tiebreaker works thusly. So, I will ask the question. Shout out your answer. Then you will each get 20 seconds to elaborate in the order we heard your answers. And then in the same order, you'll get 10-second rebuttals, okay? Very similar to the speed round.
Sure.
Here is the question. What movie character would you entrust with preventing the end of the world all by themselves?
Captain Marvel.
Superman.
Captain Marvel. Superman.
Christopher Reeve, Superman. Trish and I both picked Superman, basically.
5, 4.
Tony Stark.
Tony Stark. Okay, Cap Marvel, Superman, Tony Stark. It's Trisha, Greg, then MARKEIA. Trisha, 20 seconds begin when you speak. Taking advantage of that, I see. Not a bad strategy.
I'm gonna write down my 20 seconds.
What was yours again?
Superman.
I went went with Captain Marvel because I feel like she is the obvious choice to this answer. Captain Marvel is so incredibly overpowered. We find her even difficult to use in films because she has such an enormous skill set. She is the protector throughout the known universe, whereas I feel like some of the other characters that have been picked today do not have such OP.
Greg.
I mean, it's Superman. He's faster than both of these guys. He can fly. All his powers. You see in Christopher Reeves' Superman movie, the first one, that when there's a problem, he could just go spin the world in reverse and reverse everything if everything's going wrong. He has pretty much unlimited abilities in this capacity. Where I think Tony Stark, yeah, he did a good thing in Endgame. At the same time, he is just a human being who just had to be the one to do it.
We don't know what kind of apocalypse that we're going to face. What if it's a viral one? You can't throw power on that. What you can is that you can throw genius, sacrifice, and money. You can throw Tony Stark on that. And if it is a power thing, he is also Iron Man. And he will take that sacrifice for the team, just like we know that it has already been established. So no matter what the apocalypse is, Tony Stark is the best man for the job. And he's hot.
10-second rebuttals. Trish.
Superman doesn't necessarily have his powers on Krypton. If the apocalypse starts, they were screwed. Tony Stark only really has power here on Earth, so if the apocalypse is starting anywhere else, he can't charge Jarvis. He will eventually run out.
Tony Stark nearly destroyed the world by building Ultron. Captain Marvel has a lesser power skill set than Superman. If Superman could just listen into space and go, who has some good idea if there was a virus thing, and he can find the right guy.
Captain Marvel is too busy with the rest of the universe. She always wants to go to other planets. Superman has kryptonite, and you can't go up against Lex Luthor. Tony Stark will build a Gal Friday. Tony Stark will build another Jarvis. Tony Stark is here for us.
Time. All right. Now it is Dan, Danielle, and myself, our job to pick who, unfortunately, does not move on to the speed round. Danielle.
I thought that these were all really good arguments. Obviously, everyone at this table is very good at fighting. I unfortunately, I'm going to have to say that MARKEIA would not be moving on.
Okay, that's one for MARKEIA not moving on. I thought MARKEIA's argument was strong as far as Tony's intellect, and that might win the day. For me, I thought Greg edged out TRISHA because it came down to those two super beings, and just he made the case for Superman's superior skill set. So for me, it would be TRISHA. Dan.
I would advance MARKEIA first because I agree with the thinking, which is that both Greg and Trisha just threw power at it, whereas we don't know the nature of this thing. It might require intellect, whereas Tony Stark brings that advantage. So I would advance MARKEIA. So then it became between Greg and Trisha, which is essentially a power battle, and I felt like Trisha made the argument that Captain Marvel is extremely powerful, but I thought Greg brought to bear exactly which powers Superman would use, how he would use them to counteract certain effects. So in the power battle, I think that Greg employed Superman's skill set more specifically and to the question than Trisha did with Captain Marvel, so I would advance Greg.
Greg and MARKEIA, you're going to the speed round. Trisha, you fought like a G, valiantly, nicely done, and sadly, there's only two can move on to the speed round.
That's okay, let me just get out my popcorn.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. All right.
I've been at the Groundlings.
Great space work. You guys have all done this before. It works the same as the tiebreaker that we just did. I'll ask the question, call your answers, 20-second answers, and then 10-second rebuttals in the order that you answered. It is tied 1-1. That did not count for a point. So 1-1 tie. Here we go. Question one of the speed round. What director who never has should make a movie about the end of the world? What directors never made a movie about the end of the world should make one? Five, 4, 3. This is ASMR. 3.5. 2.5. 2.
David Fincher.
David Fincher. to 1.5.
David Lynch. I think that's how you say his name.
Lynch, yes.
Lynch.
Okay, we have two Davids, Fincher, Lynch, and Greg. We heard you first with David Fincher. 20 seconds begins when you speak.
Can you repeat the question before I go?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
What director who never has should make a movie about the end of the world?
The end of the world is a really weird concept, and we've seen David Lynch do weird before. I want to see a director who's this is sort of out of his realm, but could actually blend in well with what he does. David Fincher excels at psychological, dark thrillers, and when you're dealing with the apocalypse, you're going to deal a lot with the psychology, the psychosis of how people are devolving and kind of turning on each other, who's trying to get each other.
MARKEIA.
When I picture the end of the world, I want something that is R-rated, huge, but is also darkly comedic and brings that, because that's what it is. It's like it's the end of life as we know it. It's like the end of our lives. I want the end of this to be something Deadpool-like. I need for it to be a splash, grotesque, but also funny and breaking the fourth wall.
I don't feel like Lynch is like Deadpool-like. With Fincher, he can bring that R-rated element too. If you've seen his movies, or I think movies like Seven and such are very violent films, and I think more importantly, you'll get a character piece, not just a mood piece.
Along with this, Lynch, is that you get that character aspect of it, where it's darkly funny, but it's also incredibly vulnerable and personal, and that's what I want for an end of world movie. And
Dan, where do you stand on this?
Well, I want to bring up a point of order, because I think we might have had some crossed wires here.
Okay.
Greg, if I understand, you thought that MARKEIA was arguing for David Lynch, correct?
Yes.
And MARKEIA, you're arguing for David Leitch, the director of Deadpool.
Yeah.
Oh, I heard you say Lynch.
So, yeah,
I'm sorry.
I think we were at cross
We both heard
purposes
Lynch.
here a little
Gotcha.
bit. So I might,
Thank you.
might allow.
Yeah,
I would say 10 more seconds for each for Greg to counter David Leitch, and then MARKEIA, I think, to respond to that, just to make
Gotcha.
sure we're all.
Thank you for catching that. I heard Lynch and I heard Lynch.
I apologize that was me.
No.
I
It's.
apologize.
I think it was just the Leitch and Lynch are so close, and
Yeah.
everyone
Yep.
made an assumption that everyone else was talking about somebody
Yep.
different. So I think just maybe 10 more seconds each.
Dan,
and then
thank you
we'll-
for being on
Leitch
top of
is-
that.
Yeah.
So,
Leitch is the Hobbs and Shaw director, and
he's
he's not Chad Stahelski.
No, not Chad Stahelski. Exactly.
But yeah, John Wick is fun.
and he directed the second Deadpool.
yeah.
Yes. So. Whenever. 10
10
more
seconds.
seconds. Each, starting with Greg.
Okay.
Greg,
I got you, guys.
10 seconds starts with you. Yep.
You're talking about elements that David Leitch has not brought to the table as a solo director. Deadpool 2 is funny, Hobbs and Shaw is ridiculous, but these are qualities that he's not demonstrated. He knows how to make fun, campy action films, but that's about it, whereas David Fincher would deliver,
Yeah, we're talking about a director that has never done it but has the elements to it. When we see how the scale that he can do, like he did in Deadpool 2, but also have the comedic fun with it. Like he could do time travel, he could do just giant things that come here and take us on.
All right, Dan, now.
That's a hard question. That is a hard question.
Yeah,
It's
that
very
had never
difficult.
done it. All I could think were directors that had.
I think ultimately, going by the approach that everyone brought to it, I feel like I've seen some funny. It came to the director, and for me, the argument that made the most was the specifically what the director themselves would bring to it, and I think Fincher won out for me. MARKEIA was more of an approach, and I think I heard more about why David Fincher himself, what he would bring to it. So I would go with Greg. It's very, very even for me.
Right on. Danielle.
Mix up and everything aside, I thought that there were some great points for Fincher. I do agree with the dark thrillers and talking about the way that psychology would go into it. I did think that other than just mentioning some strengths and some set pieces, she mentioned how besides being funny, it can also be very vulnerable, very personable, along with having a big scale. So I'm going to go with MARKEIA.
It's 1-1. Yeah, at the end of the day, it really just whetted my appetite and got me that much more interested to hear this, the dark psychological journey about the apocalypse. So, yeah, just barely, I gotta go Greg and Fincher. So Greg gets the point there, and it is now 2-1 with question 2 of the speed round upon us. Which movie, post-apocalypse, would you rather live through? Mad Max or Waterworld?
Mad Max.
Okay, Greg has Waterworld.
Really should have answered faster.
Okay. MARKEIA, 20 seconds begin when you speak.
I prefer to live in a Mad Max apocalypse because we already have people that survive desert climates. We know how to battle this technology. We know how to battle windstorms and everything like that. Humans do not just live in water. We don't do that. For like what Waterworld in general, having to like recycle our own pee and only live on boats, that scurvy of the highest order.
I think what especially Fury Road really demonstrates that it's easy that living in the desert that you would easily dehydrate, you just starve, it's harder to find food. Whereas if you're living on water, A, that's pretty cool, it's different. B, it's easy, you're not gonna go thirsty. C, you're also gonna be able to go fishing or grab whatever kind of sea creature. All the things that you struggle with, you're not gonna have that same struggle with the Mad Max. Well, you don't trust it. Right.
Rebuttals?
One of the major things that Waterworld says is that it's salt water. You cannot drink salt water. Water everywhere, but what am I to drink? While with Desert Survival with Mad Max, like I said, that we, like they established that we have the cars, we have the technology.
Everyone in Mad Max is just like evil and trying to hurt you. Like you can't trust a single human being there. Where at least in Waterworld, if you got a Kevin Costner on your team, man, you are protected. You are safe. Mad Max is just like danger left and right.
All right, water everywhere. MARKEIA gets that point from me. Oh, that was poetry. So that's 1. Dan?
Yeah, it was close for me until the rebuttal, and then it's like, well, I think Mad Max would also be someone who's would be on your side. So I feel like MARKEIA, the rebuttal didn't quite do it for me from Greg. So the MARKEIA gets the point.
Bam, MARKEIA, you just tied up this ball game. We're going to question number 3 of the speed round.
It's all Pete.
Who would you want to roommate with in the apocalypse?
Dennis Hopper and the Smokers.
Who do you want to date in the apocalypse?
Okay. If the apocalypse were about to happen, what one movie would you save to enjoy in the aftermath for the rest of time?
Oh.
Five, 4, 3,
Shaun of the Dead.
2.
The Man Who Knew Too Little.
Shaun of the Dead, Man Who Knew Too Little. We heard Greg first. Greg, 20 seconds begin when you speak.
What's great about Shaun of the Dead is that it gives you hope while you're like having to deal with an apocalyptic situation. And I'm assuming you're not alone in this apocalypse. You're able to remind yourself that as long as you have your friends, as long as you have some family, things can be okay while this apocalypse is happening. The Man Who Knew Too Little is like comedies like that. All they are is like kind of funny, but they don't really work after a while.
If I'm living in apocalypse, I don't want a movie that reminds me of an apocalypse because I'm already in one. I want a movie that has Bill Murray, and it's really great, where it's like, and you can also see society and all of its foibles, and just you can really warm in that like blanket that The Man Who Knew Too Little can give you. While Shaun of the Dead is funny, but I don't want to see zombies when I'm like starving in a cabin.
Well, Shaun of the Dead has a lot of levity, and I think it can actually be beneficial to be watching something that you could sort of relate to in your real life, but can bring hope to your real life. Whereas The Man Who Knew Too Little, that doesn't really bring any extra nuance, and the jokes would get old very fast upon rewatch.
Along with the comedy of The Man Who Knew Too Little, I will actually have these really great comedic performances that are going to be in it. I'm going to have, Boris. You're going to have, like I said, Bill Murray. It's...
All right, Dan, what do you got?
Ooh, that's tough because they both made really good arguments. Like they were both founded on really solid ground as far as like, do you want to be comforted or do you not want to be reminded of what you're going on?
Yeah.
Ultimately, I think I'm going with Greg. I thought that was great to punch against the idea that you may not want to be reminded that you're in an apocalypse, but also the idea of like hope and a situation, relatability. I think Greg made the stronger argument of the two.
That's one for Greg. Yeah, I went the opposite way. That really spoke to me, not wanting to be reminded that you are in this dire strait by watching a movie about a dire circumstance over and over again. So I'm going to go with the lighthearted fare of The Man Who Knew Too Little and MARKEIA. Danielle?
If only, and this for me, it wasn't either one of those. Like, it wasn't about that or that, the warm blanket versus dealing with the world. Greg brought up something that is unfortunately super true about comedies. If that's all you're watching for a lifetime, those jokes are gonna get so old in Man That Knew Too Little. Whereas with the Shaun of the Dead, I feel like those jokes are gonna get kind of old too, but since it is something that you can relate to, that might be one where it's like, oh, that thing with the dogs, that happened to me yesterday. So because of that, I have to go with Greg.
Greg moves into the lead 3-2. This is game point for Greg. MARKEIA needs it to take it to another tiebreaker. Here it is. Which end of time scenario had led to better movies? Which end of time scenario has led to better movies? Alien invasion or zombie outbreak?
We're talking about like the genre in general?
Yeah, which has spawned better films? An alien invasion scenario or zombie outbreak scenario?
Alien invasion.
Okay, Greg, you have zombie outbreak. MARKEIA, 20 seconds begin when you speak. Five, 4, 3.
Alien invasion movies have led to better movies because not only does it take the hope that we have as a planet, but it's like we have an other to go up against. So then we become even better for it. And then along with that, with Alien Invasion, the scientific and the cinematic leaps and bounds that have happened with that, from Independence Day to say.
Five, 4, 3.
The zombie franchise has led to just much better, more personal films. Alien invasion movies are always the same. Alien attacks, we gotta find a way to survive. Whereas zombie films focus a lot on the heart, the survival elements. I just brought up Shaun of the Dead. That's all about hope. The George Romero franchise, all those Of the Dead movies, like 5 or 6 of them, are most of them are pretty fantastic films. World War Z epic.
But we're talking about better movies. We're talking about pushing the envelope. Zombie outbreak films tend to be more B movies. They tend to release on like Netflix, or they release like indies like on Shudder. It's smaller, but with like better movies, you have that.
Bigger does not exactly equal better. I mean, Jim Jarmusch is doing a new movie with Bill Murray that is a zombie movie. And Zombieland, for example, is a big movie, but that's also a wonderful film. You haven't really listened to any Alien movies. I've listed several.
Time. All right.
I listen to Independence Day.
You listen to
I thought MARKEIA had some lovely points in her opening salvo, but then Greg hit just the heart, and then he gave specific examples. That won me over. I gotta go, Greg, on that. Danielle.
Oh, yeah, so with this one, Unfortunately, I loved MARKEIA's argument, but as soon as she said how zombie movies tend to be smaller and not quite as grandiose, as soon as he wound up being able to bat that away and name some that were bigger, like a Zombieland, that did that for me. It was just like barely, but it was just because of that counter. So Greg,
you just took movie fights. Well played. This was an epic journey. It's but you got us there. You took it home, MARKEIA. Well fought all the way. Like you guys, very entertaining. Greg, go ahead and say whatever you like, my friend.
I love watching these two specifically. Like literally, like I watch them all the time on the internet, and I got the right sides. So basically, when I was doing this match specifically, I had a moment where I got pulled out, and I'm like, this is one of the reasons I just love watching movie fights. Like, there are times where we do get a little bit intense, but I really feel like we're just having a great movie discussion. You both are so freaking funny, and I just love I really, really loved doing this fight with both of you. This was great, seriously.
Heck yeah. Where can people find you, man?
Oh, yeah, that thing. The Real Rejects on YouTube, and at the Greg #ALBA on Instagram and Twitter.
Good stuff, and I second what you say. I'm just being privy to this good stuff. Woo, it's fun.
Yeah, I like losing. Like when I lost, I liked it actually. I was like, they deserve that. Yeah.
Trish, always so smart and funny. Please tell us some things.
Well, yeah, thank you guys so much for having me, and absolutely well fought to my two competitors today. Greg is one of my favorite people to fight against, always for the good vibes and the positivity. And the first time we fought against each other, we then had like a Twitter conversation for the next 3 days about the movie fight. I think it was amazing.
Years ago, yeah.
So movie fights, we fight, but then we all become friends after. It brings us together. So seriously, thank you guys for having me again. Thank you, MARKEIA. You fought brilliantly. And if people want to find me online, they can do that at @GRLTrish on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook, and on YouTube and Twitch /TRISHA HERSHBERGER.
All right. MARKEIA, great stuff. Your comic book knowledge, you always drop like some nugget where I'm like, damn, that's a deep cut, and just great stuff today. Please tell us where we can find you and all that good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to continue the conversation with y'all because, oh my God, y'all, this was really fun.
Let's hit the diner after this.
Let's hit the diner. Let's do like some milkshakes. And let's talk some more about like the whole Aragon, Ethan Hunt, Sarah Connor thing. 'Cause that was a really good.
Jessica Cruz.
Yeah, Jessica Cruz. So if you have DC Universe, it's a subscription service, DC Movies, Comics, and TV. I'm a host on there, DC Daily, so you can check that out Monday through Friday. And also you'll find me like around Nerdist doing random things, so check out there. But if you want to connect on the internet, then Twitter and Instagram @MARKEIA McCarty. That's MARKEIA MCCARTY. So yeah.
Thanks, MARKEIA. Dan, it looks like we this weekend we have Rocket Man versus Godzilla. Who's going to win that battle?
First of all, doesn't that sound like a movie that actually exists? Godzilla versus Rocket Man.
That should have been our pick.
Yes!
Rocket Man, easily.
Maybe in a few years. Well, we'll see. It's going to be. It sounds like it's very likely going to be Godzilla because of the size of it. But how will people react to the reviews? Reviews have been a little for it, but that doesn't always stop a movie. Rocket Man, Bohemian Rhapsody did so well. There's going to be a lot of enthusiasm, and then you got Ma out there too. Octavia Spencer holding it down. So I think it's going to be a very healthy weekend at the box office.
Yeah.
But it would be shocking if Godzilla was not the movie that was number one.
Yeah, it's a crazy weekend because there's 3 movies that I've seen Godzilla already, and I absolutely want to see those other 2 that you mentioned. Danielle.
Hello. Yeah, this was such a great fight because it's always interesting to see the way the fights are different depending on who you have on. And this was definitely the deep cut fight. This was great. It made me really happy. For me, keep watching all the movie fights and the commentaries. And I just did the evolution of Captain America. You can go check that out. Also, I have my wrestling podcast, Tights and Fights, comes out every Thursday. And follow me on Instagram and on Twitter.
Yes, follow everybody here, and please follow me @Hal Rudnick, HALRUDNICK on Instagram and Twitter for just fun stuff, dumb stuff, just idiocy and opinions.
Tournament of Nerds coming up?
Tournament of Nerds. Oh no, we're off because of I'm getting married soon.
Yeah.
My 3 dogs that I have with my fiance will no longer have to watch us live in sin. You guys, thank you for throwing it down. This was such a blast. Thank you, Billy Biz. Thank you, JTE. And thank you to our sponsor, Amazon Prime and Good Omens. Check that out May 31st. And thank you for watching. Bye-bye. This episode was brought to you by Good Omens, a new series premiering on May 31st on Amazon Prime Video.